Before we jump into this episode, I want to remind you that while Caitlin and Sophia are dietitians, we're not your dietitians. This means the information shared in the Food Freedom Fertility podcast is intended to entertain, educate, and inform. It is not a substitute for medical care. This information is not intended to diagnose, manage, or treat disease. Always consult with your doctor before making any changes.
Welcome to another episode of Food Freedom and Fertility. You have your celebrity. Just kidding. We were just laughing that we're not celebrities. Dietitians, Sophia and Caitlin, your partners in infertility struggle, here to educate, empower, and provide hope along your journey. And that is what this episode is all about. We've brought on a mama that is so beautiful, and in the next X number of days, pretty soon, going to have her first baby, a PCOS baby, and somebody that I would say has listened to everything, been a great pupil, all the questions. I just love Taylor. So Taylor, thank you for being here with us
Thanks.
today. And we're excited to share your story.
Thanks. I'm excited to be here. My cousin yesterday texted me and said, you could go into labor in 2 days, 2 hours, or 2 weeks. And I said, I hope it's in 2 minutes.
You're like, you didn't give me that
You're
option.
ready, huh? Good for you.
Yeah, but we have some time, but
yeah.
I'm excited.
How far away is your due date?
Like a week and a half now.
Yeah.
So
it is that thing, because you could even go past that and you just kind of have to go like, it's a moving target and we'll
Yeah,
be
Caitlin,
excited.
you with all your babies, you went past your due date, didn't you?
Fiona was 3 days early, but Seamus was 2 weeks late, and Bonnie was 2 weeks late. Seamus was 10 days late. So
yeah.
But I imagine, Taylor, is this part of your story? You know exactly when you guys conceived?
Yes.
Yeah. So very often, tell us how you know exactly how you conceived.
Well, I know the biggest thing is my temperature spiked.
Mm-hmm.
So I was tracking my temp like religiously for years.
Mm-hmm.
And so I know like exactly when I ovulated, which made it really easy when I went into my doctor and they were like, when's your due date? And I knew. And then we had like a 7-week scan to double check and it was right on. So
Yeah.
Nice.
So backing up, because we could start right from there, but backing up, when did you get your PCOS diagnosis? Was it prior to starting to grow a family, or when you were starting to grow your family?
So I was like 18 or 19. My mom had been diagnosed with PCOS and a lot of like her sisters too.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was kind of like on her radar. And then I went to college and went like, I don't know, 9 or 10 months without having a cycle. And so my mom was like, let's go to my doctor. And so we went in and got the diagnosis and he just put me on birth control. That was my solution for a really long time. But, and I just kind of thought that was normal to just like, that was the only option.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was on that birth control for years. And then several years later, I had a knee surgery and ended up with a blood clot in my leg from that knee surgery. And then I found out that once you've had a blood clot, you're not really supposed to be on birth control pills anymore because it can increase your risk of clots again. And so I went to that doctor again and was like, so what do I do? Because I was told I had to be on birth control for the rest of my life unless I was trying to conceive. And now I physically can't be. And he was like, well, you could try an IUD or you could do this or that or whatever. And I was like, but do those help manage PCOS? Because like I wasn't married, I wasn't sexually active, like I wasn't worried about pregnancy at that point at all. And he was like, well, we could try metformin. And I was like, okay. So that was just kind of all I ever did, was metformin. And then when I got married, I was like 27. So it had been like 8 years since I initially got my diagnosis. And we were pretty anxious to start a family pretty quick. So we didn't like prevent anything. We weren't actively trying for a long time, but We weren't like trying to stop anything. And I went to the doctor and just said like, so how do I like, do you have any pointers? Like, what do I do here? And he was like, well, once you get pregnant, your PCOS will probably get better. And I was like, okay, but how do I get pregnant? Because I have PCOS. Like, I don't know what to do. And he talked to me about losing weight and recommended a diet program and all kinds of things like that. And I tried some diet things and then ended up gaining a bunch of weight back. And it was just like super frustrating and hard. And so we tried for a while without much success. And then I found you guys. And then that changed the trajectory of my life, basically. So
Yay. ... That's a fun
biggest
intro.
yay.
So did you find the podcast first, or did you find one of our Instagrams first?
I think, I can't remember because it's been like 2.5 years ago now, probably. Probably, I'm guessing I found one of your Instagrams because I don't know how I would have found a podcast. Like, I wasn't actively searching out podcasts. So I'm guessing I probably was following a couple PCOS people that recommended you that got me to the podcast. So it's kind of probably pretty simultaneous. I probably found them all at the same time.
And then from that point, you also joined one of my programs, right? Was it the Hormone Academy?
Yes, the Hormone Academy.
Yeah, which isn't actually fertility specific. It's kind of like I just kept getting asked the question, like, what if I want to manage my PCOS if I'm not trying to get pregnant? And my handle was PCOS Fertility Nutrition. But when people kept asking, I was like, okay, well, we got to do this resource. But the fertility course was only opening up every once in a while, and you could join the Hormone Academy whenever. So I think that's how you ended up there, right?
Yeah.
Which, I mean, this shouldn't shock anyone, but managing PCOS to improve your fertility doesn't really change the recommendations to just managing PCOS to manage your PCOS. Like, managing your PCOS will improve your fertility. That program just didn't have the extra things about cycle tracking and male fertility and, kind of all the extras that
when
went
to go
into
for
it.
Clomid, what if you,
Exactly. Exactly. So coming into that program and learning things, what was drastically different from what you were doing otherwise? Were there dietary changes you made? Did you start taking supplements? Did you change how you moved? Like, what did that look like for you?
I think the biggest thing was like blood sugar balance, just like learning about that, because I feel like it was like I have to cut out sugar completely or I have to eat it all the time. Like, that's kind of my mindset, what it was. And so I think understanding a little more about like the makeup of different foods and like what you can eat together to help your body process it differently, or if I eat a cookie, then maybe we'll go on a walk too, like, or just different things to help my body process sugar was like a really big thing for me. Also movement in general. I tried movement that I like hadn't before. I wasn't a big like walker or yoga person before, and I always felt like I just had to like run, and I don't like running, so I never really exercised all that much. So adding that in, and then like supplements as far as like inositol, like that was a really big one. I feel like those are probably the biggest like life changes that I implemented the quickest. And sleep, probably. I'll add sleep in there too.
I want to take a minute out of this episode and talk to you about our partner, Fertility Cloud. We decided to partner with Fertility Cloud this season because we have worked with women all over the nation, and we have heard the same issues arise again and again. My doctor can't see me for another 8 weeks. I had to wait 3 months to see a specialist, and even then, they didn't really tell me anything. Or there's no one in my small town that knows anything about my situation or can help me. And that's so common because unless you live in a major metropolitan area or a place that has grand medical universities, and honestly, sometimes even then it's still an issue, it's really hard to find fertility specialists who can give you tailored, customized help for your unique fertility situation. And that my friend, is exactly what Fertility Cloud does for you. They offer everything you need, but right in your home because it's fully online. Another perk is they often have same day or next day appointments, so no waiting weeks and weeks and weeks in order to be seen by someone. And my favorite thing of all, really the pièce de résistance and the reason we are partnered with Fertility Cloud for this season, is they have a love and a passion for helping families grow. It is why they do what they do. It is why they wake up in the morning. It is why they have this world-class staff who cannot wait to step in and help you along your journey. So if this sounds like what you have been dreaming of, click the link in our show notes and go to fertilitycloud.com for $50 off your first visit.
So sleep was something that you struggled with before, falling asleep, staying asleep. Like,
Yeah.
what changed
Being
there?
on my phone up until bed and then trying to shut my brain off by doing that and then not sleeping very well at all. Like I was waking up multiple times a night, and I never really thought about that being connected to like other areas of health until, I don't know, I started learning more about all the areas. So yeah, that helped with that. And then just kind of also having a community in general, because I feel like at first when I was listening to the podcast, it was like, this is all well and good, but I have to do this forever. It was like, it would be really nice if I could just like trust my body to do what it's supposed to, and I don't have to worry about what I eat in what order and what, like it was just felt really overwhelming.
Dare to dream, Taylor. I mean, even those of us without PCOS are still all about that. We still got to live that life. I know, man. Why can't I just be that kind of person who eats like a brownie for breakfast and is like happy and skinny and healthy? I think that person just like doesn't exist. Maybe she's skinny, fine. There are people that can eat whatever and be skinny, and people that eat like crap and get pregnant. But honestly, you got to pay the man at some point. There's something going on with them that's like not healthy.
Yeah.
They just look good because they have plastic surgery.
But I think understanding that like I'm not the only one in this situation, like, and there was like a community of people that felt the same way. And in fact, small side story, when I was pretty deep into like the infertility world, we've been trying for like probably 2.5 years or something at this point. I reached out to Caitlin. I don't know if you remember this. I would imagine you do, but I reached out for like book recommendations. And Caitlin, I think you posted it like on your Instagram or something, just like asking for book recommendations. And then one of Caitlin's followers, I believe, like sent me a book.
I do remember that.
And it was like this like 28-day devotional when you're in the middle of infertility, kind of just like a little like booklet kind of devotional thing. And it was like such a touching thing because I was like, I'm not the only one going through this. Like the book was like super helpful and I cried every day reading it. Like it was like super great for me at the time. I needed it at that point. But just knowing that like I had a connection somewhere to people that were going through similar things was huge.
Yeah, I do remember that. We asked, and then the person recommended it and then messaged me individually and said, I would like to send this book to whoever asked the question. So if you can get their address for me, I will send it. And she followed through and did it. How lovely is that?
Wow.
Yeah.
Like, way to be just like a loving human. Truly.
Yeah. It blew me away.
What has that looked like outside of just doing nutrition and movement and sleep and supplements? Did you guys seek fertility care or work up with any fertility clinics? We are so glad you're enjoying this episode, and we want to take a brief moment to talk about one of our sponsors, Fullwell. Fullwell is not only a reproductive nutrition supplement company created and formulated by a registered dietitian, but they are a company that has the highest quality standards. They use the most bioavailable ingredients in the right amounts to ensure that you're getting the most out of your supplement. And let me tell you about one specific supplement, the Fertility Booster. The Fertility Booster is a combination of adaptogenic herbs and powerful antioxidants. Oxidative stress is something that occurs in every single body, and when it's accumulated, it can deplete antioxidants. Upping the antioxidants in the body by turning on the antioxidant protection system through food and supplementation is one way to support the body's free radical defenses and better support fertility overall. Oxidative stress impacts all humans, and this is one thing I love about the fertility booster. It helps supercharge both egg and sperm quality. You've heard about stress and how it can impact so many things in our body, and how so many people just say, hey, just relax and you'll get pregnant. Well, ashwagandha is actually an adaptogenic herb, and it can help reduce cortisol levels and increase sexual function. So the next time someone tells you to just relax, you can say, hey, no, I don't need to just relax. I'm taking the fertility booster by Fullwell and supporting myself in this way. When we talk about powerful antioxidants, one of them that is the king of the show is coenzyme Q10. In its reduced form, it functions as an antioxidant in cell membranes and lipoproteins, helping to optimize fertility. And the queen of the show, in my opinion, N-acetylcysteine. It's a supplement form of cysteine, a semi-essential amino acid that benefits fertility via its role as a precursor to glutathione. It can also support healthy cervical mucus. So, next time you're ordering your Fullwell Fertility Prenatal, make sure that you grab a hold of their fertility booster so you and your partner can get a healthy dose of these antioxidants and stress support. Use the code FFF20 at checkout to get 20% off your first order. And now, back to our show.
So we didn't go to a clinic specific for fertility. I tried a couple of different doctors, like while I first was starting out, listening to the podcast and starting the Hormone Academy. And there were a couple that I didn't love. And that was actually something that was huge too, was teaching me how to advocate for myself and how to not just listen to a doctor and nod along and say, okay. Because the first doctor I went to, I handed him the sheet of labs that Caitlin had sent me to like request, like, here's the ones I want, basically.
Mhm.
And he requested probably half of them. And I was like, but this is what I wanted. Like, anyway, so I like stayed with him long enough to get the labs drawn that I wanted, and then was like, nope, not doing that again. So I tried several different doctors. I finally ended up with one that I really liked, and he was the one that we originally started with letrozole on like a super low dose, and we did a semen analysis, and we did, I'm trying to think what else happened throughout that several year time. At one point I had a like exploratory laparotomy, I think is that what it's called? Something like that.
Laparoscopy.
Thank you, laparoscopy.
Yeah.
And they found a little bit of endometriosis, but not like a ton. There was a little bit of like scar tissue and blockage on one of my fallopian tubes that he cleaned off. And so then we were like super hopeful, like, great, both of my tubes are open. This should be great. Perfect. This should work right now. And it didn't. So it was still kind of a bummer. And then I had, I can't remember what they call it, but it's the procedure where it's like an imaging procedure where they inject like,
Hysterosalpingogram.
yes. And so they did that, and they checked to see that everything was flowing well, and it still was. And so we were at the point where we had gotten that imaging done, and my husband and I had kind of decided, like, we'll get the imaging done, and if things are blocked, we'll just skip right to a fertility clinic. And if things are open, then we'll finish off. We had just started Clomid, and so we said we'll do the 3 cycles of Clomid, and then we'll go to a fertility clinic. And so things were open, so we did the first round of Clomid unsuccessfully. And then the second round of Clomid, I really was like, I don't know if I can do this anymore. Like, I talked to my husband and was like, this is just like too emotionally draining to have this happen every month. Like, we might need to take a break. And that was the month that we finally got our big fat positive. So it worked out really well, and we didn't end up going. We actually had an appointment with a fertility specialist at one point. It was several months out. But then we pushed it back for it's kind of a long story, but we had to push it back a little bit. So we had plans to go to a clinic, but we never made it
Needed to.
there.
You didn't have
Yeah.
to. Yeah. Your story is such a great story of pursuing things from a lifestyle and kind of a holistic perspective, and looking into things to be thorough and exhaustive, and exploring things like a little bit of endometriosis. Are my tubes still open? Like finding things kind of a little bit along the way. Um, but I can remember a very desperate email you sent me maybe a year and a half ago where you're like, do we do a Dutch test next? Like, what is the next thing that we do? And I remember giving you kind of like this is what Dutch test is. If we were going to do it, this is the one I would pick, but it's really expensive. And also, even when I do it with people, you've already done almost all the things. Like, if it's not going to change our interventions, I would put my $600. I would hold on to it or put it somewhere else. And I remember you being like, oh my gosh, thank you for being honest about like what you think we should do next. And I think that I just remember like reading the tone of your email, which is hard to do, right? Like, I have seen a video of you talking before, but you and I have never literally talked face to face until this podcast. And so I do feel like I have a rich relationship with you because I know so much about you and we talked back and forth so many times. And yet, like, I got that email and I just feel like I remember feeling the pain and the heartache and the like exasperation is maybe a good word. Like, I just don't even know where to go or what to do next. And it sounds like the next few steps were really critical steps in your journey.
Yeah.
And I think that your story is a really beautiful story of, and the medicines can really help. You know, like you could have done everything perfectly and maybe you would have conceived at some point, but you were at a point in the journey where it was so hard that you were wondering if you just needed a break from it. Right. And like, sometimes the medicines really have their place because maybe that made it a year earlier, or maybe you'll need the medicine to ovulate. Like some of us just will, no matter how perfectly we manage it all. And I just love seeing kind of like the combination of like you doing your part and really working on the health of your body, and then having that little extra bit of support to kind of get you where you needed to be.
And it was like such a frustrating process because it felt like I'm doing everything I can. Like, what else am I like you said, like I kind of hit this point where I was like, what else am I supposed to do? And I actually, when you said the desperate email, I actually thought you were talking about a different one because there was another one that I sent you probably, or maybe it was around the same like thread, but I went to a different like midwife who she did IUI, and I went in, this would have been like last December, and just wanted to meet with her with like just to talk about the possibility of IUI because it was like, what? I don't know. We're getting to the end of my rope. I don't know what else to try here. And I was sitting in the waiting room and I got an email from you, I think maybe in response to that. I can't remember exactly. And I was just like sitting in the waiting room, like trying not to cry. Like I was like, this is not, I don't want to be here. I don't want to be doing this. Like, I just want this to be easy and be over with. And like, I was just like struggling with all kinds of things. And I went back and met with the midwife and she was fine. Like, I left a little disappointed because I had really high hopes, but like she was fine. But I left and was just like, I don't know what to like. I don't know. That was just like the deepest, darkest I've been in that, like in regards to fertility in a long time. And I just was like so struggling, and having like you be able to be like, I get it, you know. I think there were several times that I'd be like, what else? And you'd give me like music recommendations sometimes. And
Oh my gosh, I just know just what you're saying. Like from Caitlin's perspective and from yours, because you're like, girl, you're doing it all. So like sometimes you just need time. Your body is not
mhm,
a machine. It's not like you pour in the ingredients to the machine and it starts cranking out exactly on the production line what you want it to produce immediately. But like, I feel like this a lot of times with people where I'm like, oh my gosh, okay, now I'm giving you exactly like you said, like, here's like a playlist and here are like affirmations, and like they're doing everything. And sometimes it's just time. You got to
yeah.
do the things and give them time. It's the hardest part.
I was gonna say that, which is the worst answer. Like when you're
It
in the
is
middle
because
of it,
it's our
that's not what you
only
want.
truly unrenewable resource, right? Like, you
Mhm,
can make more money, you can't have more time.
I think the other piece of that that can be really frustrating, and this is also like the opposite of beautiful, a really tragic part of your story, is that you had this diagnosis for almost 10 years before you were really trying to get pregnant. And you could have
mhm,
spent 10 years learning how to manage your PCOS, and maybe you would have come to when it was time to conceive in a completely different place. But your doctor sent you off with birth control, and then when that wasn't available anymore, just metformin, which uh, to their credit, somebody gave you some diet advice of something along the way, but really not a referral to a dietitian, not
mhm.
a really great book resource. And those things are now available. There are some good books out there on PCOS. There are some
Mhm.
good books out there on diet for insulin resistance. Like, even if it isn't PCOS specifically, point to something like that, because you could have spent years working on the like metabolic and hormonal picture, the undercurrents there. And maybe you wouldn't have had a little bit of endometriosis. Maybe your tubes would have been in a different place. But like, we won't know. We can't wave a wand and
Yeah,
like go back in time like those movies happen. You're like 13 again. But like, that's why these podcasts are so incredible, because maybe your story that you're being so generous to put out in the public is going to help somebody else raise their hand a little bit earlier and go, oh, there's something more than just metformin.
yeah, and I hope they do, because like while metformin was helpful in some ways, like
Mhm.
it wasn't the whole picture.
Yeah,
And I
it's
don't think I
one
said this
tool.
earlier. Yeah, I don't think I said this earlier, but at one point, it wasn't my original OB, it was a different one, had told me something along the lines of like that I was gonna have to be on birth control for the rest of my life or I would end up with cancer or something like that. And I was like, "Oh, okay." Like, so it was like terrifying. Like, what am I
Right.
supposed to do when now I physically can't take birth control? Like, now I'm just gonna end up with cancer? Like, what, you know? So I was like
What
really
an
desperate to do
incomplete
anything.
description of what
It
can
was
happen.
wild. And I didn't like, I was like 20, maybe 8, 19 or 20, like,
Right.
it wasn't very long after my diagnosis, and I was just like, okay."
You even
So
had
that was
like
not great.
family history and exposure to what PCOS could look like, right? Like, you at least had a little bit of maybe a leg up,
Mhm.
maybe. But let me comment on that statement too, in case somebody else has heard that exact thing. What the doctor is saying is that you have an increased risk of female cancers, but specifically ones that have to do with the uterine wall. Because with PCOS, you tend to menstruate less regularly, or maybe not even at all. And you have lower production of progesterone throughout your lifetime. And both of those things, the lack of shedding of your menstrual like uterine lining that builds up over a cycle, and the lack of progesterone fighting some of the effects of estrogen, increase your risk for certain cancers. So it's not like PCOS in and of itself necessarily makes it so that you're going to have a higher risk of cancer, because some people with PCOS ovulate and menstruate regularly. It's this constellation of not having a cycle, not ovulating, not making progesterone, not shedding that lining that increases your risk. And one solution is birth control because it stimulates in most ways that it is prescribed and recommended to be taken a slight growth of uterine lining and then a complete shedding in some sort of cyclical fashion. And so you kind of mask that risk by artificially making that bleeding process happen. But it's not the only option. You could be offered progesterone cyclically, where you take it 14 days on, 14 days off, and have a very similar decrease in risk. However, it doesn't check the box of also preventing pregnancy, which a lot of women are interested in. I want my PCOS to be better. I also want to get pregnant when I'm having sex. And so a lot of times the doctor only thinks of hormonal contraceptives, but it's not the only option.
We're taking a break from this episode to talk to you about one of our wonderful sponsors called NutriSense. So this isn't just another health trend. This is a program that helps everyone take control of their health and fertility by making lasting changes based on their unique needs. NutriSense is loved by over 100,000 members, and it offers a unique combination of expert nutritionist support from credentialed experts with continuous glucose monitoring data insights. So it's science plus a human touch, and it offers one-on-one support from the expert nutritionist team at NutriSense. So basically what NutriSense does is it gives you the support you need along with the data that you're getting from a continuous glucose monitor. Combining those two together with NutriSense offers you a science-backed way to take control of your health unlike anything else out there. It's access to the continuous glucose monitor as well as guidance from a nutritionist so that you can interpret this data and turn it into lasting results in your body. If you've listened to this podcast for more than 90 seconds, you know that we really don't believe in like a one-size-fits-all nutrition plan, and that things really need to be tailored to an individual for their personal health and fertility goals in order to succeed. And that's really what NutriSense offers. If this sounds like something you're interested in, which, P.S., you should be interested in this, head over to nutrisense.io/FFF and use the code FFF50 to get $50 off your first month with NutriSense. Yeah, they often think that a pregnancy is the absolute worst thing that can happen to someone, and that you're coming in there thinking, I would rather have this long list of risks than possibly a pregnancy. And they didn't consult you on that. that's and maybe that is your life, because there are people out there that are like, dude, whatever, the clitoral shrinkage, the ovarian shrinkage, like the vagina problems, the yeast infections, the BV, this list of things that, the anxiety, the depression, the blood clots, all of these things. I cannot be pregnant right now. I cannot get pregnant. And so I am like, all those risks, whatever, those are like small potatoes compared to a pregnancy right now. So sign me up. But maybe that's not you. And that's what informed consent is you being able to make that decision and extrapolate that out to your PCOS symptoms, right? It's not wrong to take birth control pills. God knows I have endometriosis. I took birth control pills for years because of pain with menstruation, because of heavy bleeding, because of all of these things. I'm not condemning anyone that chooses this medication, but you need to understand what the risks and alternatives are and understand, what is really the goal with this.
Yeah, why are you
Because like
taking
you
it?
said, preventing pregnancy was like not on the list of things that you were trying to do. And that's really the only thing that these medications are FDA approved for. So if that's not your prerogative, then maybe the thing that isn't even approved for this treatment shouldn't be the number one deciding
Or
factor
the
in
only
why you're
option.
prescribing this.
Just the only
Yeah,
option.
or the
Like
only
you
option.
weren't offered other options until
Yeah,
you said, I
didn't know.
can't do that option.
And that's so frequently, like, I don't have PCOS, but I work with gals who do. And that's like how they're faced. Like, okay, well, do you want to be fat and bald or do you want to take this medication? These are your choices. Do you want to have a beard and acne or do you want to take this medication? It's up to you.
Never mind the
And I
risk
mean,
that it
who's gonna?
increases insulin resistance. Like,
Mhm.
so if you know you have PCOS and you know you have insulin resistance, and then you're being handed birth control that makes insulin resistance worse, it's like, I get it. And I'm not against it. And I've taken it at different points in my life, but all of those things should be discussed. All of them.
Yeah,
And
and honestly, like, that's a really big, like, silver lining for me about having to go through this process is that I learned a lot about informed consent, and I learned a lot about, like, okay, so you're telling me this, and but what about this? And I learned to, like, question things a little more. And so now as I'm going through this pregnancy and they're telling me, so we're thinking we probably are wanting to induce you at 39 weeks, I can be like, okay, can
why?
you tell me why? Can you tell me the risks of Pitocin? Can you tell me, like, I can actually, like, have those conversations that I never would have had if I hadn't had to, like, advocate for myself with PCOS before.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you'd just be like, and sometimes will scare the bejesus out of you, which has happened to you
Mhm.
before. Like, well, you're gonna have cancer if you don't take this
Yeah.
medication,
Well, if we don't
and they
induce
love
you,
to
you
throw
might have a
around.
stillborn because you couldn't
Yep,
They
that
handle
they
it.
happened, like, last
love to
week.
threaten you with the worst
They
possible
told you would
outcomes.
have that your
Not
increase.
not so last week I didn't meet with my regular doctor because he got stuck in surgery. I met with someone else. So she didn't have, like, the full picture. And several months ago, I had a couple of high blood pressure readings, but it was just the top number, and it was, like, at 140, which is, like, right on the cusp of
Yeah.
having a problem. So not horrible, but my doctor was like, "I just wanna keep an eye on that, like, let's do a couple extra ultrasounds, like, we just wanna make sure." And I was like, "That's fine." Um, and then he kind of talked about if it stays bad or gets worse, like if it stays here or gets worse, we're gonna have to induce you at whatever time. And I was like, I'm not doing that. Like, I
Mhm.
talked to my doula and I worked really hard to, like, get my blood pressure back to a regular. Now I'm, like, totally perfect anyway. So
And of
I
course, the
haven't had a
things you
high.
did to work hard were not offered to you by this doctor. The
Oh,
doctor wasn't
absolutely
like,
not.
let's try more magnesium. Let's get those feet elevated for
Yep.
part of the day. Like, no,
Yep.
just
Her biggest thing, my doula too said, I want you eating at least 120 grams of protein a day. And I was like,
Praise God
okay,
for
I
your
can get back to
doula.
focus. I've focused on that before. Like, I
You're
can
like,
go
I
back to
have this
focusing
skill
on that
set. I
again.
have this unique
Yeah.
skill set from
And so
somewhere.
I started focusing on that, and my blood pressure's
Lo
normalized.
and
Like,
behold.
it was pretty wild. Anyway, so now that started around, like, 30-ish weeks, and now I'm at, last week was 37, the appointment I went to, and the doctor I met with was talking about induction, and I mentioned a doula, and she said, "Oh, are you trying for unmedicated?" And I said, "Yes." And I said, "That's part of, not the whole reason, but that's part of the reason that I don't want to be induced. Like, part of it." And she was like, "Yes, but anyone who's had a stillbirth probably would wish that they could go back and induce." And I was like, "Okay." Like, I'm glad you're not my doctor. Like, what is going on here?
that is
And
so
she
manipulative.
I
That is
know.
criminal. I am
I know.
on behalf of everyone in the medical field, let me offer you an apology. Way to take your absolute worst fear and twist it with
Mhm.
that is so
I
crazy.
have no
Yeah. So
words.
I texted my doula, like, after the appointment and said, like, this is what she said. And she immediately called me and she was like, that is not okay. And I was like, I know. Like, I just tried to laugh about it. Otherwise, I cry. But I was just like, okay. And anyway, so I just try not to think about that, but it's just, like, insane how that's, like, the medical field, some, like, there are some people that are good. My doctor is pretty good. Like, he'll listen to me.
Industrial birth,
But
everyone. Welcome.
there are just some people that I just don't get it. I don't understand. And so I'm grateful that I've had the experience of having had to navigate those types of things before
Mhm.
successfully, so that when she can say that, I can be like, well, that was dumb. Glad you're not my doctor. See ya.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not
I
going to talk to
like
you
in
again.
moments like that, I have rehearsed this statement so that it's
Oh, let's
easy
hear
to
it. Oh,
say
juice it
in
up.
moments like that. I will say, I'm surprised you feel comfortable saying that to me. Like,
I
And
wish I
then
would have said that in the
so
moment.
you have to rehearse it because you can't just pull it from nowhere. It's got to be like,
Yeah.
Okay, but this brings me to a good question. Tell us a little bit about your pregnancy. You've had a couple high blood pressure things. That even
Mhm.
happened to me in some of my pregnancies. And like with Fiona, it was because it was 110 degrees and I was drinking extra fluids and wasn't mineralized, I think, perfectly to shed it when I didn't need it. And it was hot, and a week later it was gone. But I have a family
Mhm.
history of preeclampsia. And so we were on alert for it. Like we were looking and monitoring, which you should be. Like this isn't like just like go be a free birther and never have an ultrasound. That's not what Sophia and I advocate for here. Okay. But, monitoring those things, like what was
Mhm.
that like for you, especially having
Well,
pregnancy after fighting so hard for it?
yeah. Well, and I've been really lucky. Like I didn't struggle with morning sickness a whole lot. Like,
Who
um,
are these people
I,
we keep having on our show that are not nauseous in their pregnancies? What is this
I,
unicorn
there's
tribe
part
we
You
of
have
know what?
found?
Maybe they're well nourished.
that's the thing. I almost give you guys the credit for that because maybe if I hadn't prepped my body, it would have been worse. I
That's
don't know.
maybe
I'm
true.
sorry to have interrupted there, but I'm just astonished that we're having another person on here without nausea. Please continue your story.
Yeah, I've been really lucky until now, and now I'm just uncomfortable
Well, yeah,
but
but
it's
that's
great.
pregnancy. You're just
But
real estate is limited at
yeah.
this point, right?
Mhm. So I've had some upper quadrant like rib kind of pain that I've gone to physical therapy for, but like nothing huge. But then I want to say it was right around it was either 24 or 28 weeks. I went in and had my first high blood pressure, which was like 140 over something normal. The top number was the only one that was ever high. And then someone actually yesterday said they should have rechecked that. Like
At the
they
end of
should
the
have given you
appointment.
like an
Yeah.
hour and rechecked it, and they didn't. But anyway, so I had that high one. He was like, "I'm not super worried, but we'll check." And then the next two were similarly high. Um, but one of those was the same day that I did my I didn't do the glucose test. I did the fresh test.
Mm-hmm.
And so I drank the fresh test at my house and then went on a walk to help process the stuff before I
Mm-hmm.
went into the doctor. But it was hot. And so when I went in, I was like, I bet my blood pressure is going to be high. Like, I didn't think about this. So my blood pressure was high again that time. And then the next time it was high again. But it was literally like June and July, like the hottest months here. And then since July 10th, I haven't had one. So I don't know if it was just because I was hot or
Or
what,
maybe
or
you
if the
It's
needed
because you're a human
protein
deeper
stuff
person and
helped
screening.
it's
or
not supposed to be
Mhm.
perfect all the time. And, just having a high blood pressure reading is not a problem.
So excited to tell you that the PCOS app is sponsoring this podcast episode. The PCOS app is a one-stop shop for all things PCOS. It's also your meal guide and inspo all in one. If you love listening to me on this podcast and you feel like, hey, I want Caitlin to be in my ear every day encouraging me about how to manage my PCOS, then you have to go download the PCOS app. We have curated articles to answer questions that you have about PCOS. There are short snippets in the PCOS Answers podcast exclusive to the PCOS app. We also have recipes where I not only give you the recipe, but teach you within the recipe itself what I have done to make it more blood sugar and hormone supporting so that you can take your own recipes and make them more PCOS friendly. If you've been looking for the Google of all things PCOS, with the filter of compassion and expertise that you get from Caitlin Johnson, RD, then you have found it in the PCOS app. Head to your Android or Apple store today, download it, and let's hang out.
It could be a symptom that there may be another problem, but
Mhm.
that high blood pressure reading, that borderline high blood pressure reading, in and of itself, you are not being harmed. Your baby is not being harmed. It's possible that this is a symptom of another condition that could cause harm down the line, but that in and of itself is not a sickness. That in and of itself is not a problem. And the piece that is the most important part of this is your own motherly intuition, your own connection with your body. You get to say when something's an issue and when it's not. monitor your blood pressure. That's fine. It could say anything under the sun. You are the one that says, you know what? I think that I'm not feeling well. I'm not doing well. Let's do something. Or
Hmm.
I don't care what this machine you just put on my arm says. I feel good and I know that I need to carry this baby for longer. So I'm sorry that your little blood pressure machine had a problem with me. I'm not doing this because I know that it's not time. That's the biggest piece. And I think that,
Hmm.
doctors are they're not evidence-based. They are, what's the right word?
Liability
Liability-based.
Yeah.
protecting.
Exactly,
I'd say it's a
liability-based.
mixture of the two, right? They're not
But
evidence.
I think the evidence they choose to use is often what is supporting the liability side of things. And it depends on the doctor. Okay,
Yeah,
I'm sounding like I'm dumping on doctors here. There are so many wonderful doctors, and you absolutely want one on your side.
you do because you need them.
However,
You want that surgeon guy
exactly.
when something's going wrong.
Dude,
Uh-huh.
amen. I
Mhm.
just had an endometriosis surgery. Please, you don't got to tell me. I went under anesthesia and let many doctors poke and prod me as much as they damn well please. But at the end of the day, you are the one that gets to decide what is risk and
That's
what
very
is not.
true. And I think that that is a really powerful thing to go into motherhood because Taylor, like right now, it's you and your baby. If that baby's coming out and you're going to see her face and you're going to be like, she is why life happens. And then you're going to need to make those decisions with the
Yeah.
pediatrician and what sports you let her do and how you let her spend her time and what screen time. It's like the
Hmm.
millions of
Totally.
decisions you're
Where's she
already in the
gonna
midst
sleep?
of.
Are
Yeah,
you
like
gonna use a bottle? Yeah.
all the things. You're going to have all
All
those
the
things.
things.
And if you can trust that voice inside you, if you, and I know you believe in God, if you trust God to give you information and help you, you'll have what you need to take care of this baby. You and your husband will do just great. You're going to do great through labor. Look how far you've come together already. And
Yeah.
going into motherhood, knowing how to advocate, like it is a really beautiful way you put it. It's a silver lining for this really fucking hard thing you went through. Like
Yeah.
it was hard and
Yes.
it took way too long, but you're about to come to like the finish line slash the beginning of a new race here in 2 minutes, 2 days, 2 weeks, whenever it comes. And it's going to be the best ride of your life, the best
Yeah.
ride of your life.
Well, and the last thing I'll say too is I remember there was one episode of your podcast. It's been a while, where I think it was Sophia was talking about like the anxiety piece and how like when you're trying to conceive, you could be anxious about A, B, C, da 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 da, da, and then you get pregnant and now you're anxious about a new set of things. And then now you hit this stage and you're anxious about a new set of things. And that just kind of like stayed in my mind as I started pregnancy because I was like, I don't want to just like be scared this whole time and miss the first things that are fun and exciting and whatever. And I think that as I have been like the doctors, like, we're probably going to have to induce you at 39 weeks. And then I come home crying to my husband, like, I don't want to do that. But I'm like, but I'm enjoying this time. Like, this is a great experience. And I told my husband at one point, like, here's the thing. If when I before I got pregnant, if someone said you can get pregnant next cycle, but you have to be okay with getting induced at 39 weeks, I would have been like, okay, great, awesome. So I'm
Yeah.
like trying
Sign
to
me up.
stay like, like this is the best like situation I've been in a long time and I'm happy about it and it's hard, but overall like looking at where I come from is like really hopeful and I just love it. So, and you guys, I just am so grateful for you too. So, thanks for you. Honestly, like I don't think I'd be here without the two of you. I'm
You are
glad you
why
do
we
it.
do what we do. You and your baby, this is like a ultimate mountaintop experience for us. Like we are loving this whole Win Wednesday thing because we want nothing more than to hear these stories and connect with you. And so much of the time, it's Caitlin and I talking into a camera and a microphone, not connected with anyone. And so these kinds of things, this is our delight. And you, someone of your aptitude and heart and generosity of spirit and love and security and safety in your relationship and home, growing a family, like, dude, what else is there? Come on. This is what we love. So you
Mhm.
in your life and everything you're doing, like, this is chef's kiss to this whole episode and everything
Mhm.
you're doing.
Well, thank you for all you do. I
Taylor, you have earned yourself a yeah girl. Would you like to celebrate anything?
My yeah girl is that I met with a different midwife yesterday who said, I don't know why they're so worried about your blood pressure. I think you're fine to wait. And I was like,
Heck
thank
yes.
you. I was probably going to tell my doctor that anyway, but it helps to have somebody else that agrees with me. So that was
And
my
with
yeah
a
girl.
medical perspective, right? Like it's
Hmm.
somebody else that sees birth a lot and is like, yeah, you look great. Hey, look, there might be a point in the next 2 weeks. There is a reason to induce
Yeah.
and be open to
Maybe,
it when
yeah.
there's a reason, but it's unlikely. And you might
Yep.
actually go 3 more weeks. I hate to say it. You might. It's like
That's
the
what I'm telling
average, most
myself.
evidence-based due date is 5 days past your due date for your first baby, right? So add a week in, get yourself a massage, go see all the pedicure people that wouldn't touch you for months and months because they don't want to put you into labor and be like, press that spot hard.
Crank them feet. Yeah.
Okay, well, it has been our pleasure having you, Taylor, from the bottom of my heart. Thank you for being so generous with your heart and your story. And I think it really will. You're meeting somewhere right where they need to be today with your story. So thank you. If
Thank
you
you.
love the Food Freedom Fertility podcast, share it with a friend, like it, review it, share it on Instagram, like get the word
Subscribe.
out because we're trying to do the things to get this information for you and we love you. Have a great week.